2023 was a year. A busy year, to be precise. This year has been the most hectic year of my entire life so far, since this was the year when I basically got a life, and finally managed to get ever so slightly more clarity into who I am, what I'm doing, what I am, and who I'm doing. And in the midst of all this life having, I managed to experience quite a lot of media too. Some of that media was so good that I made dedicated TheSyperior videos on it. You've of course seen every single one of those videos, so I don't have to elaborate on that any further, and if you haven't, feel free to correct your mistakes. But not everything I consumed this year could get a proper big video made about it, due to me not having enough time, energy, or stuff to say about it all to warrant that. However, that's where what you're currently watching, or listening to, look, I know you're out there doing dishes right now, you and your raisin-ass hands can't hide from me, comes in. In the spirit of series like Games That Got Me Through This Year by Rasputin or My Favorite Things This Blank by Super Eyepatch Wolf, I've decided to launch a yearly series on my channel called It's Not All Bad, where I discuss everything I wanted to talk about but couldn't make a dedicated video on from that year, to remind myself at the end of every spin around the sun that even though there will always be some unfortunate stuff going on in my life during any given year, it's not all bad. Oh, I should have called it wasn't all bad because I'm looking back at the year. Shit. And just before we get into it, I'd like to clarify that whilst I'm mostly going to talk about stuff that was released this year, there's gonna be some older stuff in every category that I just got around to experiencing this year as well. Let's start this look back with the thing at least one of you associates me with, games. Starting off with the first game I played in 2023. Before the beginning of this year, I had barely even heard of Dead Space as a game franchise. Yet when the remake of the first Dead Space came out in January of this year, despite me only knowing approximately where the game takes place and what state I might be in after visiting that place, I decided to buy it on a whim and give it a try, which is very unusual for me since the only times I buy games this expensive is either if I know for a fact they're good or, in very rare cases, if I dig their vibe from across the bar. And goddamn am I glad I checked this vibe since Dead Space is great. In Dead Space, you play as Isaac Clarke, a space engineer on a repair mission to go fix up the USG Ishimura, the greatest human-made spacecraft of this universe. The game opens up with Isaac and his colleagues heading for the titular ship, slightly confused about the lack of communication from the Ishimura, but still honored to be taking on a mission comparable in our world to getting hired for sweeping the floors of the Taj Mahal. However, their jolly mood doesn't last for long, as it seems like somebody's downloaded Bonzi Buddy onto the Ishimura's landing system, causing their ship to be pulled into the station at alarming speeds. And so the crew crash lands onto the spacecraft and starts looking for someone who could help them out of their situation in this strangely broken down ship. Also, Isaac has a wife that he's trying to find on the Ishimura too, but I decided to not really include that in the synopsis since I figured most of you would get scared about the concept of a person of the opposite sex being interested in you and click off. An extremely brief bit of exploration later, the crew finds themselves in the flight lounge as Isaac goes to do a damage check on the ship in a very convenient room looking into the lounge through a thick window. And here the game truly begins, as boopity boppity, you're dead, and oh no, the place is actually filled with aliens. In an, honestly speaking, harrowing opening, Isaac gets separated from the rest of his crew, escaping the swarms of monsters deeper inside of the Ishimura, with a brand new goal for this mission. Find his colleagues, figure out what happened to his wife, and get the hell out. This is a fantastic opening to a game that sets up the stakes and gets you hooked immediately, making you want to discover everything that's going on. And the way this discovery happens is through A really long string of fetch quests. The core of Dead Space's gameplay comes down to Isaac venturing through various parts of the Ishimura trying to find his friends, family, or an exit, having to slow down his search in every room he gets to as he can't move forward without something he doesn't have yet. It's a very video gamey approach to how you progress in your video game, but it's been done incredibly well for the most part, and even when it hasn't been done that well, the atmosphere of the game is there to carry it all the way until the end. The best part of this game is hands down the atmosphere. It manages to create immersion like I've never felt before in an action horror game like this. The environment is so consistently dark, making you second guess the shadows you see from the corner of your eye all the time. And even when there is light, you usually don't feel that much safer, because it means you'll most likely have to sacrifice it for something else down the line, in a fun mechanic where in most rooms to get something you need from that room, the game makes you use a fuse box to choose which 2 out of the 3 or sometimes 4 options you want to be active at once, with the lights usually being the safest choice to turn off. The few people still left on the Ishimura are dying just before you could save them, but right on time to see the light fade from their eyes. There's all sorts of weird noises happening all the time around you without you being able to distinguish whether or not they're monsters, the ship's systems failing, or your mother getting off of the couch. And because the soundscape of the game is basically just these sounds plus some ambient music, combined with the insane scale of the Ishimura, it all makes you feel completely helpless and alone. I think what amplified this feeling for me even more was the fact that, like I said, I knew nothing about this game going into it. So I truly didn't know what was around any corner, or hallway, or corner of the hallway. And the PS5 graphics really didn't help with the feeling less scared thing. Some of the stuff in this game is genuinely too graphic for me to show, but I am all here for it. It has been forever since I've had such a visceral all-around horror experience, being shocked at what I see and hear constantly. Though the game does die down after, I'd say, the halfway point, since this is an action horror game and you can basically shoot/kill anything you see, so once you know how to kill something, it becomes more of a hassle than anything. Speaking of combat, I have nothing to really say about it. Pew pew and whatnot. With most enemies, you can only shoot off their limbs to kill them instead of headshots, so that's cool, and the weapons are pretty neat. Honestly, I'm just here for the adventure. I think that's what Dead Space really was to me as a whole. An adventure. I wouldn't say it's an amazing game, because it does have a ton of boring repetitive parts, a story I didn't understand a lickety-split about, a bunch of bugs, and way too many audio and text logs that felt like padding. But I would recommend this game as a phenomenal experience. An adventure to go on for about 14 hours exploring this desolate spaceship, trying to uncover what's going on and taking in the insane atmosphere. So overall, Dead Space was quite the pleasant beginning to my year. Pleasant might not have been the word. The next game I played this year follows in the footsteps of the Dead Space Remake, being yet another remake of a classic, the Resident Evil 4 remake. Now, unlike Dead Space, I am an avid fan of the Evil Residence franchise, though I'm very much a newcomer, with Resi 7 being my first Resi game. So when I heard that the universally considered best game in the franchise was getting a remake, I didn't have to think twice before buying it. And you know what? Aside, in Resident Evil 4, you play as Leon Kennedy, a former police officer forcefully turned agent sent out on a mission to retrieve the daughter of the President of the United States, as she's been kidnapped and taken somewhere in Spain, the spookiest place in Europe. He arrives at the supposed daughter-retrieving spot, and after a cinematic opening of walking and exploring a house, discovers that, oh no! This place is full of zombies. So now he's gotta deal with that alongside trying to find his target in the only way he knows how, with excessive violence. This is a very simple and solid plot for a very simple and solid game. Everything you'd want from a Resident Evil game is here. Fun and sometimes difficult inventory management, shooty bang bang action, the corniest C-grade action movie moments known to man, and pacing that makes it feel like the game never ends. This game was so much longer than I would have ever expected, with me first thinking the game was near its end at the halfway point. It just keeps on giving, but I don't think that's a negative. To a certain extent. I enjoyed my time for the most part with this game, constantly being excited to learn something new about the world, gather enough money for a new weapon, or experience another intentionally terrible line of dialogue. The Resident Evil formula has stayed fairly unchanged for a reason. It keeps you interested. Except when it doesn't. I did start to get a bit tired during the final third of the game, where things went from, holy shit, I am nowhere near the end, am I? To, holy shit, I am nowhere near the end, am I? Real fast. The gameplay got a bit samey after the 50th round of new bad thing appears, shoot bad thing, Leon be funny, repeat. And they'd thrown so much egregious stuff at me by that point that I wasn't surprised by anything anymore. Also, the story had gotten a bit stale by then as well, but that's not that big of a negative since the story's not really why I'm there for Resident Evil. It quickly started getting to the point where I was just trying to beat the game for the sake of beating it. There was nothing in the final third actually keeping me going besides that. Doesn't mean the game's bad, the first thirds of the game were great, and overall I am very happy that I got to experience this game, especially in this remade form that was a bit more suitable for a person of my used to great controls on everything age. I'm not saying I couldn't handle tank controls, I'm just saying that I really don't want to play with tank controls. Is the Resident Evil 4 remake my favorite Resi game ever? Definitely not. Is it still a great game and a fantastic entryway point for newcomers of the franchise that's a bit easier to get into than the newest games? Absolutely. Give it a try if you're interested. The next game I want to talk about is one that I blatantly ignored for the longest time, not wanting to give into the hype of it. But after years of avoiding it, I finally gave Hades a chance. And yeah, okay, all of you were right. This one's gonna be a really quick one since I have nothing to add to the conversation when it comes to Hades. It's a phenomenal roguelike about an underworld prince with daddy issues trying to escape his dad's grip to meet up with his mom to find out what happened to her, all the while his cool distant relatives from heaven try to help him out. The story is incredibly smartly crafted, giving you lore and details about the world one tiny piece at a time each time you die, making you want to do more and more runs without it feeling forced or unnatural. The dialogue from each character stays entertaining and interesting all throughout. The gameplay that consists of you battling your way through the layers of the underworld is tight and consistently exciting with great design, and the personality that oozes from this game is something that I truly haven't seen from any other game in my life. I think that's all I can really say about it at this point. It's Hades. It's amazing. Those VAs better have gotten the pay of their lives for the amount of dialogue they had to record. Artemis best girl. Moving on. Next up, we're heading into a world I haven't explored on my channel much so far. VR. And more specifically, the game I Expect You to Die. A puzzle game from 2017 where you play as Agent Phoenix, a spy tasked to go on various missions to continuously foil the plans of the evil Dr. Zor. And immediately I must say the names in this game and the name of the game itself are going a bit too hard considering the gameplay is comparable to placing a baby in a room with a bunch of buttons and waiting to see if it finds the one that sets off the nuke. The entire concept of every mission in this game is that you get placed in a singular space with a ton of things you can interact with in that space, and you have to figure out how to make stuff happen with these things to do whatever it is you need to do and get out. out. It's exactly what early VR was made for. The technology wasn't advanced enough yet to let you move around freely without being sick on yourself, so instead everything you'd ever need was in one space where you don't need to move. I say early VR since the age of this game does show a bit when comparing it to the VR games we're used to nowadays, with the very flat textures, no collision everything, and aforementioned can't move from the singular space you've been put in. I'm sure back when the game came out I would have burst on the spot after seeing the detail put into the interactivity of the objects, sorry, but after having experienced some newer VR stuff, the age shows. However, looking past its relative oldness, this is an incredibly fun game. Some of the levels were actually intense as hell, and because you get stuck in these spaces looking over every minute detail of them, the game also manages to immerse you into this admittedly hard to get immersed into late 2010s VR aesthetic. And god, when you've been stuck in a singular space for 30 minutes picking up random things and bashing them against everything, completely lost as what you need to do, when everything finally clicks and you manage to blitz the entire level within 2 minutes, it is the greatest feeling ever. This game is very good at making you feel smart, or at least it made me feel smart, and I like that since it's a feeling that doesn't happen very often. Overall, I Expect You to Die was a lovely palate cleanser at the end of the year from what I usually play, that I highly recommend if you have a VR headset. There's 2 sequels that you can buy as well if you like the game enough. Also, the intro sequence of this game is incredible. All of you need to go watch it immediately after pausing this video and then coming back once you're done, please and thank you. The next game I'll be talking about, I've been waiting for over 5 years. You don't know this about me yet, maybe, but my favorite PlayStation game and one of my favorite games of all time is Insomniac's PS4 rendition of Spider-Man. Back when it came out, I was obsessed with it and 100%ed it in a matter of days. And when Miles Morales came out, I bought it immediately and liked it equally as much. So you can imagine that I was a tad bit excited when it was announced that a full-blown sequel to one of my favorite games ever was going to be released. And now that it's out, damn, look, I knew the game was gonna be good, but this good? Spider-Man 2 is now in my top 3 games of all time, and one of the best video games I have ever played. I didn't think the first game could be improved upon this much, but they managed to find almost everything wrong with the first game and completely annihilate that shit from the second one, only leaving the cream of the crop behind. The movement system, which was already one of my favorite systems ever in the previous entries, has been made even better with the wingsuit and extra movement options, making me not want to go back to the now slow feeling first game's movement ever again. The combat has been made way more fun by giving you almost all the moves you gain in the first game immediately, meaning you actually have something to work with instead of just punch and dodge at the beginning of the game. And including the super moves from Miles Morales adds just a tad bit more depth to the combat that got pretty stale in the first game after some time. The game has 2 main playable characters now, and whilst I initially thought this would make the game a bit incohesive and take away from the experience, the developers managed to make Peter and Miles' personal stories work together and relatively smoothly transition between one another and the main plot. Speaking of which, the story of this game is one of the biggest improvements this game has to the first one. In the first game, I was really not there for the story. The first half of it is a bunch of nothing, and the second half turns that shit to 100 way too fast, and relies too much on the player knowing characters from the Spider-Man universe preemptively. But then they created the best Spider-Man movie ever inside this game. Spider-Man 2 tells a great Spider-Man story without relying on knowledge from outside the games, explaining the villains and their motives properly and making it so anyone could play the game and understand the story if they just know who Spider-Man is and maybe played the first games. Peter and Miles are a spider duo, but suddenly a villain named Sandman attacks the city, which starts a snowball effect of increasingly stronger villains attempting to take over New York. That's all you need. And because it's a game, they can do so many more things that a Spider-Man movie just couldn't do. And the best part about it is that you are the one controlling Spider-Man. There were so many moments throughout the story where I thought, there is no way they're letting me do that, and then they let me do it. I was absolutely flabbergasted, gobsmacked, in a dither from some of the moments in this game. And the further I got, somehow the better it got. And unlike the Resident Evil 4 remake, I didn't get tired at any point and retained that, oh my god, there's more! Excitement from beginning to end. Now, it is not a completely perfect game. Peter and Miles' stories didn't connect as much as I'd have hoped for them to connect, and the main story is very much just a Peter story, but Miles is there also. Gameplay-wise, they clearly wanted to remove the quick-time events that many people complained about in the first game, but didn't commit hard enough, so we ended up with sometimes having to maybe press square before a cutscene can end. And also, unlike the first game, I actually got soft-locked a good few times whilst playing this game. But honestly, none of those negatives matter to me. This game took one of my favorite games ever, but somehow did everything so much better. I couldn't even think of going back to the first game anymore. Next to Spider-Man 2, it feels like an archaic slog compared to this masterpiece of a video game. I don't care if you don't like Spider-Man, I don't care if you don't like superheroes, I know, you gotta go play this game, goddamn, it's amazing, it's so good, holy shit, the details, they took away the stealth sections, everything's so much better, oh my god, And with that, the game section is done. That took a while, but don't worry, the next sections are shorter. Now I'd like to talk to you about the thing that I inarguably consumed the most this year. Spaghetti YouTube videos. I watch way too much YouTube, so I can't give entire sections to talking about individual videos, because then we'd be here until you get a job, which is very far away. So instead, I'm gonna do the section as a lightning round, quickly talking about some of my absolute favorite videos that came out this year. I've made a playlist for them that I'll link below. Regular Show is Insane and I Love It by Jay Latney is a perfect baseline representation of what I love about video essays. Passionate rambling about something you like with a healthy amount of personality and good editing thrown in there to keep things from getting boring. I got through the entire video easily without ever having seen a singular episode of Regular Show. An extremely solid video. Frog and Toad, The Philosophy of Simple Living by Quality Culture technically came out last year, but shut up, I saw it this year and it's too good not to talk about. The video talks about the children's book series Frog and Toad and how underneath its simplistic core was a very beautiful piece of art, with a lot of the book's stories being contrasted to IRL examples of the creator's childhood. A video so cozy it left me processing everything through a low-pass filter for the next few days. Great work. I love Eurovision a lot, because of course I do, and let me tell you, Eurovision 2023, how it was made and behind the scenes by Fernand's live show is the best documentary style video on Eurovision I have ever seen. With quality so high for such a low subscriber count channel that I genuinely thought the video was an official documentary made by Eurovision that had been ripped and uploaded onto YouTube, when in fact it's just an incredibly good quality video that deserves a lot more views than it has. If you like Eurovision, this is a must-watch. Petscop, The Darkest Game You Cannot Play, plus A Virtual Void of Misery by Nexpo are some of the finest videos from Nexpo's channel, and serve as the single best explanation of Petscop online, at least to my dumb brain, with some truly impeccable pacing. How I Finished My Gaming Backlog by Daryl Talks Games is now my favorite video from him, documenting his journey through trying to get his entire gaming backlog completed in just a year. That served as a great payoff to the prequel video he made about this very same topic about a year ago, and it made me want to go play and enjoy video games more than almost any other video I've seen. The World of Five Nights at Freddy's by Thaf9 is the only FNAF related video I watched this year, and damn was it a good one, with just incredible production quality. It's just a really good video. There's a reason this man is one of my favorites on YouTube. God damn, that is some good shit. And finally, every Jacob Yeller / Cadicarus / Eyepatchwolf video that came out this year was amazing. If you couldn't tell, I have very pretentious tendencies. And with that, the YouTube section is all done. all done. Well, alright, I might have lied when I said I wouldn't be talking about any video series in length, since this one is so unbelievably important to me that I can't not give it its own section. You see, at the beginning of this year, last month came back. If you haven't seen my content video, don't go watch it. The only thing you need to know from that trash pile of a video is that my favorite thing on YouTube ever is the series Last Week/Last Month by Tomska. It started out in 2016 as a simply weekly vlog series by Tom, where he documented his life for 100 weeks until the end of the series in 2018, when it transformed into a monthly series that lasted for the rest of 2018 and then properly went on a hiatus until the beginning of this year. And I couldn't be happier it's back. Somehow I managed to get the same feeling of comfort and safety from the newest version of this series that I got from those first 100 weekly vlogs 5 years ago. And the amount of raw emotion I associate with this series, due to it getting me through the absolute worst days of my life, made the comeback hit that much harder. It's not an insightful period piece of content that will live on forever in people's hearts, it's just a British guy vlogging sometimes if he remembers. But I can't express enough how incredibly glad I am that the series came back. Even if the series came back for just this year. I'm living in the past and I don't know if it'll continue next year. I highly suggest you give it a go, even if you haven't heard of anyone associated with the series. It is so good. And whilst we're on the topic of Tomska and friends, I just want to take a second to talk about something that matters to absolutely none of you, but is very much important to me. I think I just described this entire channel, because a few months ago it was announced that Elliot Goff, the editor for Tomska and Friends who also appeared in most videos during his time there, would be leaving the channel to pursue his own goals. And it was quite bittersweet to see him leave after being used to him being there always. So I just wanted to take a second here to say thank you, Elliot, for being such a huge part of my favorite channel on YouTube and being a massive inspiration for me as an editor. Best of luck for whatever you do in the future. Anyway, let's talk about some anime. This is a tonal shift and a half. So I watched a lot of anime this year as well, and did want to talk about it in some detail, but the thought of showing clips from multiple different anime studios at once scares me, so instead enjoy this mini lightning round of my favorite shows I saw this year, with very minimal showing of footage. And so we have arrived at the end of the video, for which I've saved probably one of the most important events of my life. One of the first YouTube channels I started to follow on YouTube all the way back in 2015 was a channel called Dan and Phil Games. And from there I found the personal channels of Daniel Howell and Amazing Phil as well. If you don't know who they are, look them up. And these two British fellas became some of my favorite content creators quickly and have stayed as such ever since. They're practically tied with Tomska and Friends as my all-time favorites. Last year, one of these favorites, Daniel Howell, released my favorite video on YouTube to his personal channel called Why I Quit YouTube, which is a video so good that I'm not gonna go into it here, since honestly, I might just make a separate video about it someday in the future. All you need to know about it for now is that at the end of this roller coaster of a video, Dan announced he was going on tour. And he was coming to Finland. I had actually tried to go see Dan and Phil live before, back in 2018, when they did a show called Interactive Introverts. However, all the tickets had been sold out by the time I had started even considering going. And I was sad about this for a very long time, since after this tour, Dan and Phil slowly fizzled out. They stopped doing their gaming channel completely, didn't do anything with each other for a good while, and barely uploaded for a good few years. And with each passing year, I started to regret not getting to see that tour more and more, since I was so certain that I would never be able to see either of them live again. But then this tour stepped in as my savior. If you're not from Finland, you probably can't imagine just how unbelievably rare it is for anyone of any scale to come tour in our country. Dan and Phil are in fact the only non-Finnish YouTubers I have ever seen even dare try coming over here, so when I saw the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity of a tour pop up on my screen, I took that opportunity so hard and pre-ordered my tickets to the front row. I'm not that rich, I think 10 minutes after the pre-order went live. And so, on February 17th, 2023, I got to see Daniel Howell live on the We Are All Doomed tour. I'm not sure if the tour will ever have a DVD release or anything like that, so I'm not going to spoil the contents of the show itself here, but let me tell you, it was one of the best nights of my life. I remember sitting down in my chair looking around the showroom of well over 200 people excitedly talking about this tour with As It Was by Harry Styles playing in the background. And in that moment my brain finally caught up to what was about to happen from the hassle of trying to get there. All of these people, including me, were here to see Daniel goddamn Howell, and very soon I would be able to see one of my heroes on stage in Finland. And after this realization was only a few more minutes of chattering until the lights turned off, the music got quiet, and the show began. Being able to see this person who had gotten me through so much in my life right there in front of my eyes was something I have never experienced in my life. He was there, I could see him with my very own eyes. He was insulting my culture. Wow. No wonder people get a bit nervous when they're meeting someone they look up to. I was 5 meters away and sweating bullets. And the show itself was a journey and a half. I laughed more than I've ever laughed at a live event in my life. I almost cried like 5 times. I was inspired and surprised by so many parts of the show, and overall had one of the best experiences of my life and a night I will not forget for years to come. You can see why I left this one for last. This was incredibly important to me. So if you were at the same showing that I was at and heard somebody go, "Woo!" I mean, yeah! Yeah, that was me. And with that, we've come to the actual end of the video. This year has been a lot, and I'm sure next year will be a lot as well. And I just wanted to say cheers for sticking around and watching most, if not all, my videos. I tried to make some good videos. Some of them turned out less good, some of them turned out pretty fine, but I'm glad so many of you stuck around to see every single one of them. This has been the biggest year for me on YouTube. So yeah, thanks for being here this year, and I hope you're gonna be here next year as well. And that's where I would have left the video if it wasn't for the fact that half a year after Dan's tour, Dan and Phil Games came back. Remember how I said they shut their gaming channel down soon after Interactive Introverts? Yeah, well, they brought it back, and it's genuinely better than it's ever been, because now that they've both come out, they can be way more of their authentic selves, whilst retaining the campiness of the original videos that made them so great in the first place. Spooky Week's back, Gaming Mess is back, Dan vs. Phil is back, Phil destroying a sparkly Christmas ornament with his ass somehow is back, the Sims series is back, all of it is back, and they are genuinely making the best content that the channel has ever seen. My boys are peaking, and I am so here for it. And with that, I actually leave you. See you next year. Bye!